I'm Gavin Glakas. I'm a professional artist. I paint what hopefully look like modern realistic paintings. I'm represented by Principal Gallery of Alexandria. I paint portraits, and I teach a portrait and figure class at the Yellow Barn in Glen Echo. I want to thank the Rockville Art League for having me here to judge the show. I really enjoyed judging it and looking at the variety of the work. When I judge a show, I'm basically looking for two things. I'm looking for talent level and idea. And by idea, I don't just mean subject matter, but I mean the artist setting up a problem for themselves to solve and going out of their way to try to solve it in a really unique way. The problem could be purely visual, like how to depict warm light on blue fabric. It could be more psychological or emotional. How do you do a series of photographs of cold, rainy nights and have them feel warm and uplifting? But I want to see the artist trying to solve a problem in a unique and really personal way. And on a personal level, I'm really drawn to ambitious artwork. That doesn't mean complicated, it can be very simple. But it means, and it doesn't mean big, it can be very, very small. But artists saying to themselves, I'm really gonna try to push myself, and I'm gonna try to do the best thing I've ever done, and try to really solve that problem I've been working on for a while. This is the painting that I chose for Best in Show. It is appropriately titled Lady on the Phone by a gentleman named Robert Lamar, and I looked at it for about less than half a second before deciding that it was going to win the grand prize. I just thought mainly that it was beautifully put together, and in my opinion it couldn't really be improved upon in any way. I haven't painted very many perfect paintings in my life. The infusion of greens and purples and just all of that incredible color throughout the entire thing gives it a real uniqueness. I haven't seen a lot of paintings like this, and I think it's just tremendous. And I didn't even really pay attention to the subject matter or the composition, which I think is just flawless. The composition of not only the doorway leading you into the painting and the doorway leading you out, but all of the geometric elements scattered throughout this, while this artist is still able to maintain a very organic feel to it. I'm really impressed by it. I can't say enough about it. I think it's a terrific work of art. This is a watercolor painting by a woman named Karen Norman, especially for a medium that's so difficult to control. And I think this is just a beautiful work of art. I think it hits the bullseye between work that is incredibly realistic and incredibly abstract all at the same time. It doesn't look anything like Andrew Wyeth's work, but in that sense of being a very abstract image that happens to be painted realistically, or a very realistic painting of an abstract design, I think it's beautiful. I think the way it's composed, the colors that she uses, compositionally, these two keys right here. I mean, either one of these keys could be a beautiful finished work of art sitting in a frame by itself. The design, I think, is so neat, along with just that organic feel of the fruit, the color, everything about it. The way that the bowl is cropped and off-centered, the incredible amount of work that goes into it. I am a big admirer of very ambitious artwork, and I love the work that looks like the artist said to himself, I don't care how much it takes for me to do this, I'm going to do something really excellent. And that's what all these designs that to me are such an afterthought in this painting would really add to it. She could have been very happy with just the bowl, the fruit, and the keys by itself, but she put in all this time on these designs, which for me really adds to the piece as a whole. I think it's just a beautiful work of art. I love this painting. I gave it first place. It's by a gentleman named Noble Adler, and I didn't even realize that it was called The Bureaucrat, which I think is hilarious. I love works of art where the artist takes chances and where the artist, in this case, paints very confidently, and where the artist sets himself up with problems to solve. How am I going to achieve all of the proportions and the structure and get all the color with all of this abstraction? And how am I going to paint something beautiful that is so incredibly, I don't want to say ugly, but just horrible in a really good way? This is just a beautifully horrible painting, and I love it, and that's why I gave it first place. I love the notion of artists trying to make something that is incredibly difficult, even more difficult on themselves, not only by painting so painterly, and throwing in those really aggressive brush strokes, but by letting the paint just drip all over the place and obscuring things that you've already painted beautifully. It's really not very easy to paint something perfectly, and then deliberately mess it up. It's not that easy to say to yourself, I have this beautiful body here. It's so hard to paint a nude. This is terrific. I'm gonna put this look of horror on this person's face and definitely scare off some of my audience in an effort to win over others. I love this work of art. It's just painted with incredible confidence. There's nothing like seeing a musician or a painter just work with confidence. And this says to me, I am so confident in what I'm doing, I'm gonna try to make this as difficult on myself as possible and run the risk that it's gonna fall apart completely in order to achieve something really spectacular. This is a drawing by a gentleman named Noble Adler called Quiescence. And for me, drawing is about the purest form of creativity there is. It's sort of akin to somebody sitting down with an acoustic guitar and just making beautiful music. It's the best possible practice for improving your talent level. Some of my favorite works of art of all time are drawings, whether the artist put a lot of time into them or just a couple of minutes. It's my favorite thing to do in just about the entire world. And there's sort of no hiding your mistakes in a drawing. You can hide any manner of sins in a painting, but in a drawing you can't quite get away with so much. And I think this is just a flawlessly executed drawing. I think it's beautiful. The hatching, the proportions, the anatomy, everything about it. The restraint, I should say the restraint. It's very easy to get caught up in incredible levels of detail in areas like this and in her ear, and the restraint that he employs in terms of what to include, not adding too much so we get bogged down in ribs and veins and anything that's going to take away from the overall feel, I think is impressive. But he still manages to put in a great level of detail, which I particularly love. The slightest little suggestions of fingernails, it's really easy to kill that. It's like adding some type of really strong ingredient to food. If you put in too much, it'll just decimate the entire thing. But just a hint, I think, is absolutely beautiful. This is a collage by a woman named Patricia Zanni called A Fauvist Landscape. One of the things that I'm really drawn to in art as an appreciator and a creator is ambition. And saying to oneself, I'm gonna create something ambitious and something really grand, and especially on a very small scale. It's easy to make something enormous and say to yourself, this is just gonna be great with a capital G, but to create something this ambitious on such a tiny scale, I love that problem that this artist has set up for herself. I know very little about collages. I've spent very little time in my life doing collages. And really looking at collages, and I've really enjoyed the process of going through the collage room and looking at them and learning from them and sort of dissecting them. And I was just so impressed with the level of work that would have gone into this. The finished product, I think, is absolutely beautiful. Like I said, the grandiosity of it on such a tiny scale is great. I love the juxtaposition of 2- and 3-dimensional images, so I'm always drawn to work with patterns in them. This artist's ability to create depth and space and 3-dimensionality out of all these 2-dimensional images. It's called a Fauvist landscape. That's exactly what it is. It's a Fauvist landscape, and it's terrific, and that's why I gave it first place. This is a sculpture by a woman named Frances Lederer called The String Quartet. I think it's really well done. The thing that I respond to about it is the compositional flow to it. I think the angles, the way that it's set up, particularly this angle here, there's a sort of circular motion which, for me, feels musical. It feels sonic. And the same way as there's a rhythmic sort of bounciness to it, to the ridges and the buildup of the material, and to the positioning of the figures in it, that feels classical and musical to me too. I really think it's a well done piece, and I really like it a lot. I like the fact that she included the stand too. It's little details like that, I think, that artists can often overlook that really add to a work of art. So I think this is a terrific sculpture, and I congratulate Frances on her first place.